Christmas morning should have smelled like cinnamon, coffee, and fresh pine. Instead, I stood barefoot in the snow, while my father shoved 2 garbage bags into my arms. "You missed the deadline," Harold Carter said, pulling the front door halfway shut. "You don't live here anymore." "Dad," my voice caught in my throat, "I told you I'd transfer the rent this afternoon. The banks were closed yesterday." "Not my problem." Behind him, my younger brother Ryan leaned against the hallway wall, grinning like he was watching his favorite comedy. "Guess being 31 doesn't make you an adult after all," he laughed. "Good luck starting over." I stared past them into the house where I'd spent nearly every Christmas of my life. The tree Grandma and I used to decorate still glowed beside the fireplace. My presents, what little I'd bought for everyone, were still underneath it. Mom folded her arms. "You should have thought about all this before falling behind." "I've never missed a payment." "You missed this one." "It's one day." "It doesn't matter," she replied flatly. "The rules are the rules." The deadbolt clicked. The front door closed. As curtains shifted across neighboring windows, I realized everyone on our quiet street was watching me get thrown out of what my parents insisted was their asterisk house. Ryan called through the door one last time. "Try not to freeze." I stood there for several seconds, unable to move. Then I picked up the garbage bags and walked toward my car. I thought I had just lost everything. I had no idea I was driving toward the one place that would change every single thing I believed about my family. The heater barely worked as I sat behind the steering wheel, trying to warm my hands. My phone buzzed twice. One message from Mom. "Return your house key." Another from Ryan. "Maybe next Christmas you'll have your own place." I almost laughed at the irony. For 6 years, I'd paid more and more rent every month just to keep living in that house. Every increase came with another lecture. Property taxes went up. Insurance costs more. Repairs aren't free. Whenever I questioned the amount, Dad reminded me that parents sacrificed everything for their children. Whenever I hesitated, Mom called me selfish. Eventually, I stopped asking questions. Keeping peace felt easier than fighting. As I reached into my coat pocket for my keys, my fingers brushed against something stiff. A worn cream-colored envelope. I froze. Grandma. 3 days before she died, she'd placed it in my hands and closed my fingers around it herself. "Promise me you'll never throw this away," she'd whispered. "I promise. And if you ever feel like you've lost everything," her tired eyes had searched mine, "take it to the credit union, personally, trust no one else." At the time, I thought it was another sentimental keepsake. I had never opened it beyond glancing at the old membership certificate inside. Now, with nowhere else to go, I carefully unfolded the note again. Her handwriting hadn't changed. "If you ever feel you've lost everything, take this to the manager yourself. Trust no one else." I looked back once at the house, disappearing behind falling snow. Then I started the engine. The neighborhood credit union was only 15 minutes away. It was smaller than the national banks I normally used, tucked between a pharmacy and a family-owned bakery. Inside, everything was quiet. A receptionist smiled politely. "Good morning, how can I help you?" I slid the old certificate across the counter. "My grandmother told me, if anything ever happened, I should bring this here." The receptionist looked down. Her expression immediately changed. "May I see your ID?" I handed it over. She compared my driver's license to the certificate. Without another word, she disappeared through a secured door carrying both documents. Minutes passed. Customers came and went. No one called my name. Then a man in a navy suit stepped into the lobby. Gray hair, calm expression, professional posture. The branch manager. He walked directly toward me. "Ms. Barry Carter." "Yes." He studied my identification one more time, before opening a digital file on the tablet in his hands. His eyes moved across the screen, then stopped. For several long seconds, he didn't speak. When he finally looked up, there was something I couldn't read in his expression. Concern. Confusion. Maybe both. He closed the tablet gently. "Ma'am." His voice had become noticeably quieter. "Would you please come with me?" He led me past the teller stations into a private office. Once we were inside, he closed the door. He placed a thick folder on the desk between us. Then he looked directly at me. "I don't think you understand what you actually own." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" Instead of answering immediately, he opened the folder, glanced at one document, then slowly met my eyes again. His next question made my entire world stop. "Before we go any further," he paused, "has anyone been charging you rent?" Barry frowned, unsure whether she had heard him correctly. "Of course," she answered. "My parents." The branch manager didn't react immediately. He simply folded his hands together. "For how long?" "Almost 6 years. And the payments have always been made to them. Every month." He nodded once, then reached for a legal pad. "Can you tell me approximately how much?" Barry took a slow breath. "It started at $800. Dad said Grandma's mortgage balance, taxes, and insurance were more than he'd expected." She looked down at her hands. "Then it became $900, then $1,100. Last January they raised it to $1,300. The manager quietly wrote each amount down. "They said repairs were expensive. The roof, plumbing, utilities. There was always a reason." "And you never questioned the increases?" Barry gave a small, embarrassed smile. "I tried." She remembered the conversations, almost word for word. "I don't understand why it's going up again," she'd asked one evening while helping Diane clear the dinner table. Her mother hadn't even looked up. "So now you're complaining about contributing?" "I'm just asking." Harold had lowered his newspaper. "Do you know what homeowners pay every month?" "No." "Exactly. You're getting a bargain." Ryan had laughed from the couch. "Imagine whining about helping your own parents." Barry remembered apologizing. She always apologized. It was easier than another argument. Back in the office, the manager looked at her carefully. "Did you ever sign a lease?" "No." "Any rental agreement?" She shook her head. "No." "Did you ever transfer ownership of the property?" Barry blinked. "I don't think so." "You don't think so?" "I signed papers after Grandma passed away, but Dad handled everything." "He said it was probate paperwork." The manager asked another question. "Did anyone explain those documents to you?" "No." "Were copies given to you?" "I never received any." He leaned back in his chair. "What about tax statements, insurance notices, ownership records?" "My parents collected all the mail after Grandma died." Barry stopped speaking. A memory surfaced. Not one she'd thought about in years. She had come home from work one afternoon to find a stack of unopened envelopes on the kitchen counter. She had reached for one. Her father had taken it first. "I'll deal with those." "They're addressed to me." "They're estate paperwork. It's confusing. I'll explain it later." He never had. Another memory followed. A certified letter. Her mother had casually mentioned signing for it while Barry was at work. It wasn't important. Barry had believed her. She suddenly remembered asking, several months later, whether any lawyer had ever called. Her mother had smiled. "If they needed anything, they would have called me." Ryan had overheard and laughed. "Legal stuff is boring. Be glad Dad handles all of it." At the time, those moments hadn't seemed unusual. Now, sitting across from the manager, they felt completely different. Barry looked up slowly. "You're saying someone tried to contact me?" The manager chose his words carefully. I'm saying our records indicate multiple requests for an in-person appointment following your grandmother's estate planning. Multiple? Yes. I never received anything. They were mailed. Barry stared silently at the desk. Every notice would have arrived at the house. Every letter would have gone through her parents first. She felt the pieces beginning to move into place, but the picture still wasn't complete. I don't understand. The manager opened a secure database on his computer. There are limits to what I can discuss until we verify everything. I don't want to mislead you. So, you're not saying my parents did anything wrong. I'm saying I need facts before conclusions. He printed a document and slid it toward her. Across the top was her grandmother's full legal name. Beneath it appeared a notation she had never seen before. Beneficiary appointment pending. Barry's pulse quickened. What does that mean? It means, the manager replied carefully, someone was expected to come here after your grandmother passed away. I never knew. I believe that. Silence filled the office. Then someone knocked gently on the door. The manager looked up. Come in. An older employee entered, pushing a small archive cart. On top sat a sealed gray records box. Across the front, written in neat black lettering, were words that made Barry's stomach tighten. Estate file, Evelyn Carter. Her grandmother. The employee placed the box on the desk. We found the archived records you requested. The manager thanked her. After she left, he rested one hand on the unopened box. This hasn't been accessed in years. Barry stared at the seal. If everything her parents had told her was true, then opening it would change nothing. But if they had hidden even one thing from her, everything she believed about the last 6 years might collapse the moment that seal was broken. The branch manager cut through the archive seal and lifted the lid. Inside were folders arranged by date, each one marked with Grandma Evelyn's initials. He removed the first file carefully. This is the trust agreement. Barry leaned forward. The title meant almost nothing to her, but her name appeared repeatedly throughout the first page. Barry Carter, sole beneficiary. She read the words twice. Then a third time. Beneficiary of what? The manager turned the document toward her. The property on Willow Lane. Barry stared at him. The house. Yes. My parents said Grandma left it to the family. He glanced back at the papers. That is not what this says. He pulled out another document, titled *Temporary Occupancy, Agreement *. Harold and Diane Carter were listed by name. Their permission to remain in the house was tied to one condition. Barry had to be given full access to all ownership records, financial statements, and trust communications. Barry's fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. So they were allowed to live there. Temporarily, he said, they were not given ownership. And they could charge me rent. The manager paused. I cannot interpret the legal consequences for you, but I see no authorization here allowing them to collect rent from the beneficiary. Barry looked back at the box. Years of rent increases flashed through her mind. $1,300 a month. Lectures about sacrifice. Threats whenever she asked for receipts. Christmas morning in the snow. The manager removed Grandma's notarized instructions. One line had been underlined in blue ink. No occupant may demand payment from Barry Carter as a condition of residing in property held for her benefit. Barry stopped breathing for a moment. They knew. The manager did not answer. He did not need to. A business card was clipped inside the folder. Martin Cole, trust and estate attorney. The manager picked up the phone. I strongly recommend you speak with Mr. Cole today. Less than 2 hours later, Barry sat across from the attorney in a quiet office downtown. Martin Cole was in his 60s, with silver-framed glasses and a habit of reading every page before speaking. He examined the documents from the credit union, then asked Barry to explain exactly how the rent had been collected. "Bank transfers," she said, "sometimes checks." "Do you still have records?" "Yes, I work in financial compliance. I keep everything." For the first time that day, something in the attorney's expression shifted. "Good." He reviewed 6 years of payment confirmations from Barry's online banking account. Every month, money had gone directly to Harold Carter. Several transfers included notes such as asterisk rent increase asterisk, asterisk asterisk roof contribution asterisk, and property tax adjustment asterisk. Martin placed the records beside the trust agreement. Your parents had no ownership interest in the property. Barry said nothing. They were permitted to occupy it under specific conditions. They were required to disclose the trust to you. They were prohibited from charging you to live there. Barry swallowed. What happens now? First, we request records. You mean ask them? Formally. That afternoon, certified notices were delivered to the house. The letters demanded proof of Harold's claimed landlord authority, copies of all property expenses, and a full accounting of every payment collected from Barry. Her father's call came less than an hour later. What did you do? Barry held the phone away from her ear. I spoke to the credit union. You had no right to go behind my back. It's my name on the trust. A silence followed. Then Harold's voice hardened. You don't understand those documents. Then send the attorney proof that you own the house. I don't answer to some stranger. You charged me rent for 6 years. You can answer one question. Her mother took the phone. Barry, stop this before you embarrass yourself. You threw me out. Because you failed to pay. For a house I own. Diane's voice dropped. Your grandmother wanted us to manage things. Managing it didn't make it yours. The call ended. By evening, relatives began contacting Barry. Her aunt accused her of trying to steal the home Harold had paid for. A cousin said Diane had spent years protecting Barry from financial responsibility. Ryan posted a long message online, claiming his sister had turned against their parents on Christmas Day. Comments appeared beneath it. How could she do that to family? Her parents gave her everything. Some people become cruel when money is involved. Barry read the accusations once. Then she closed the app. Martin had warned her not to argue online. Instead, she forwarded every message to his office and authorized him to share the trust summary with anyone directly involved in the dispute. Within 2 days, the calls changed. Aunt Marlene contacted her again. This time, her voice was quieter. Barry, your lawyer sent me the first page. I know. It says the house was yours. Yes. Your father told us he bought it from your grandmother. He didn't. Another relative admitted Harold had claimed Barry paid rent because she refused to help with household expenses. Barry sent him copies of 6 years of transfers. The family's version of events began breaking apart. At the same time, Martin sent Harold one final request. Provide the deed. Provide the lease. Provide any written authority permitting him to act as landlord. The deadline passed. Nothing arrived. No deed. No lease. No proof. Martin called Barry into his office the following morning. A single document rested on his desk. What is that? She asked. The next legal step. He turned it toward her. At the top, in bold letters, were the words, Notice to terminate occupancy. Barry looked at him. Martin placed a pen beside the document. This is the one thing your parents never believed you would be willing to sign. Barry stared at the notice without touching the pen. For several long seconds, the only sound in Martin Cole's office was the ticking of the wall clock. I can't believe it's come to this, she whispered. Martin folded his hands. Neither can I. They're still my parents. I know. She looked back down at the document. If I sign this, they lose the house. He gently corrected her. No. Barry looked up. They lost the right to stay there the moment they violated the trust. This notice doesn't create that consequence. It acknowledges it. She remained silent. Martin continued. You have every legal right to let them stay. I do. Yes. But if you choose that, understand exactly what you're accepting. He slid another folder toward her. They've already demonstrated that they're willing to charge you rent for your own property, conceal legal documents, and remove you from the home when you stopped paying. Barry slowly opened the folder. Inside were copies of the certified letters Harold had ignored. The unanswered requests. The missed deadlines. Every opportunity to explain. Every opportunity to cooperate. They never responded, she murmured. No. They never even tried. Martin shook his head. This isn't about revenge, Barry. He met her eyes. It's about ending ongoing financial exploitation. Barry picked up the pen. Her hand trembled. Then, with one steady signature, she signed the notice. I never wanted it to happen this way. I believe you. 3 days later, a licensed process server walked up the front steps of the Willow Lane house. Barry remained across the street, inside her attorney's vehicle. She didn't want to witness it, but she knew she had to. Harold opened the front door. What is this? The process server handed him the envelope. You've been served. Harold frowned as he read the first page. Then his face reddened. This is ridiculous. The server simply nodded. Instructions are included. The door slammed. Seconds later, Harold stormed onto the porch holding the papers. He spotted Barry sitting inside Martin's car. His expression hardened. He marched across the lawn. You've lost your mind. Barry stepped out of the vehicle. I followed the law. You don't evict your parents. You shouldn't have charged your daughter rent for her own house. Neighbors paused while hanging Christmas decorations and carrying groceries. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Harold lowered his voice, realizing people were watching. This is family business. You made it everyone's business the day you threw me into the snow. Before he could answer, Deanne hurried outside. Tears streamed down her face. Barry, please. She reached for her daughter's hand. Barry stepped back. You don't have to do this. I didn't start this. We raised you. And Grandma trusted me. Deanne froze. For the first time, she realized Barry knew about the trust. Her face lost all color. You went to the credit union. Barry didn't answer. She didn't have to. That evening, Barry's phone rang repeatedly. She ignored the first 6 calls. The 7th came from Ryan. She answered. What? You've destroyed this family. I didn't. You actually served Mom and Dad. Yes. You chose strangers over your own blood. Barry took a slow breath. No. I chose the truth. Ryan laughed bitterly. You think one piece of paper makes you right. Barry asked quietly. If Dad owned the house. Ryan interrupted. He does. Then why couldn't he send the attorney the deed? Silence. She waited. Ryan didn't answer. Instead, he changed the subject. They've lived there for years. So have I. You owe them. I've paid them for 6 years. They paid the bills. Did they? Ryan hesitated again. For the first time, uncertainty entered his voice. I don't know everything. I know. The call ended. While emotions erupted inside the Carter family, Martin's office focused on documents instead of arguments. A forensic accountant reviewed 6 years of Barry's transfers alongside household expenditures. Barry sat beside him as spreadsheets covered the conference table. The accountant highlighted payment after payment. These were marked as roof repairs. He opened another folder. The roof wasn't replaced that year. Another page. Property tax adjustment. He compared it with county records. The taxes actually decreased. Another transfer. Emergency plumbing. He checked contractor invoices. No plumbing contractor was hired. Barry felt her stomach tighten. So where did the money go? The accountant continued tracing the records. Vacation deposits. Airline tickets. Ryan's SUV down payment. Camping equipment. A luxury entertainment system. Restaurant charges. None of them related to maintaining the property. The numbers became impossible to ignore. Every increase in Barry's rent had quietly funded someone else's lifestyle. The house had never been getting more expensive. Barry had simply become the family's income source. Martin closed the final ledger. The financial picture is now very clear. The deadline for Harold and Diane to leave the property came and went. They refused. Instead, Harold mailed a handwritten letter insisting no judge would ever remove parents from their daughter's house. Martin read it once, then placed it into the evidence file. The court won't decide this based on emotions. He filed the final petition. 2 days later, Barry stood inside the courthouse as the clerk accepted the paperwork. A heavy stamp struck the documents. The sound echoed through the quiet hallway. There was no turning back now. As Barry stepped outside into the winter air, her phone vibrated. Martin's name appeared on the screen. She answered immediately. Barry. Yes. His voice was calm. The judge signed everything. The eviction was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Barry barely slept the night before. She wasn't worried about losing. The court had already ruled. She wasn't afraid of confrontation. She had lived through 6 years of it. What kept her awake was one question she couldn't silence. How had her own parents convinced themselves that what they had done was acceptable? Just after 8 that morning, 2 sheriff's deputies pulled up in front of the Willow Lane house. Martin Cole arrived a few minutes later, carrying a slim leather folder containing the court order. Barry parked across the street. She had no intention of celebrating. She simply wanted to witness the end of something that had controlled her life for years. The lead deputy knocked firmly. Harold opened the door. What now? The deputy handed him the signed order. The court has ordered the termination of your occupancy. We're here to supervise the move. Harold barely glanced at the paperwork. This is my house. No, sir. It has been for years. The court has already determined ownership. Harold's voice rose loud enough for nearby neighbors to hear. My daughter manipulated everyone. The deputy remained calm. You may disagree with the ruling, but today's purpose is enforcement. Diane stepped into the hallway behind him. Her eyes immediately found Barry standing quietly across the street. She shook her head. I never thought you'd do this. Barry answered softly. I never thought you'd charge me rent to live in my own home. Neither woman said another word. There was nothing left to argue. Over the next several hours, moving boxes filled the front yard. Ryan loaded furniture into a rented truck with angry, hurried movements. Every few minutes he looked toward Barry as if expecting her to stop everything. She never did. Martin eventually walked over to Harold. I have something for you. Harold refused to take it. I don't want another one of your legal tricks. It's a certified copy of Evelyn Carter's written instructions. Harold hesitated before finally accepting the envelope. He unfolded the first page. His eyes stopped midway through the document. Martin quietly pointed to a paragraph highlighted years earlier by Grandma herself. Barry is never to be charged for residing in property held for her benefit. Any occupant who conceals ownership information or financially exploits her shall immediately forfeit occupancy rights under this trust. Harold kept reading. His shoulders slowly lowered. For the first time since the process had begun, he had no argument, no accusation, no explanation, only silence. Across the street, several neighbors watched from their porches. Many of them had witnessed Christmas morning. They had seen Barry standing in the snow with garbage bags while Harold locked the door. At the time, most had assumed she was an irresponsible daughter refusing to pay rent. Now the deputies, moving truck, and court paperwork told a completely different story. Mrs. Alvarez, who lived next door, quietly crossed the street. "I owe you an apology." Barry looked surprised. "For what?" "I believed what your father told everyone." Barry smiled politely. "You weren't the only one." Within days, other relatives began calling. Not to criticize, to apologize. Her Aunt Marlene admitted Harold had insisted Barry was freeloading in the family home. Another cousin confessed Ryan had told everyone Barry was trying to steal the property after Grandma's death. Barry didn't argue. She simply emailed copies of the trust summary and the court order whenever someone asked. The documents spoke more clearly than anger ever could. One by one, the conversations changed. People stopped asking why Barry had evicted her parents. They started asking why her parents had spent 6 years collecting rent from their own daughter. Some relatives quietly distanced themselves from Harold and Diane. Others admitted they had ignored warning signs because challenging family felt uncomfortable. The carefully protected story finally collapsed under documented facts. When the moving truck finally pulled away, the house stood silent. Barry unlocked the front door with the original key she had almost returned on Christmas morning. She stepped inside alone. The living room felt strangely unfamiliar despite every memory it held. She walked slowly from room to room. No shouting. No lectures. No demands for another rent increase. Just silence. In Grandma's old reading corner, the chair was still there. Barry gently brushed her hand across its worn wooden arm. "I made it back," she whispered. A week later, she framed Grandma's handwritten note beside the original credit union membership certificate. Visitors often asked why such ordinary pieces of paper occupied the most visible place in the house. Barry always answered the same way. "They remind me that truth is only useful if you have the courage to uncover it." She chose not to sell the property. Instead, she repaired what actually needed repairing, repainted the rooms herself, and slowly transformed the house into the peaceful home Grandma had intended her to have from the beginning. She also rebuilt relationships carefully. Those who apologized sincerely remained part of her life. Those who defended deception without accepting responsibility stayed at a distance. Forgiveness, she learned, did not require returning to the same unhealthy patterns. Harold and Diane eventually rented a much smaller home across town. Without Barry's monthly payments, they had to live within their own means for the first time in years. Ryan found an apartment of his own, and eventually, a full-time job that supported his lifestyle without relying on anyone else. The dependence that had fueled years of manipulation finally ended, not because Barry sought revenge, but because she refused to finance it any longer. Months later, a friend noticed the framed envelope in the hallway. "Why did you keep that old thing all these years?" Barry smiled. "It wasn't the paper that saved me." She looked around the home that had always been hers. "It was finally believing Grandma trusted me more than I trusted myself." From the day her parents first demanded rent until the day deputies carried their boxes to the moving truck, one truth had remained hidden in plain sight. The last payment they ever expected from Barry became the eviction notice that proved the house had belonged to her all along.